A few weeks ago, I found arguably one of the most complex texts in the game.
What am I? No.
MST, which stands for Mira Support Tech. In this video, I'm going to be going over the uses of MST and how it works so you can find your own spots using this tech. First, I'm going to go over how it actually works. Now, first, you're going to need a flat kiba. A flat kiba is just a horizontal kiba. Typically, it's when it extends over a surface like this. As you can see here, it doesn't like to extend over air. However, because of this hatch, it will actually extend over this hatch, so this is a good spot to show what it actually is. Now, as I'm sure you know, if you walk into a kiba in the air, it will just break. Doesn't matter if it's a flat kiba or if it's a horizontal kiba. However, this is where MST comes into play. If there's a Mira under the kiba or going through the kiba, as long as there's some part of the Mira under the kiba, you can walk on the kiba and you're fine. And you might be saying, why? That makes like no sense. But the game basically thinks that the Mira is like a real thing. It's part of the floor. It does block bullets, so when the game goes to check if the kiba you're standing on is touching the ground, it thinks it is, because the Mira is somewhat real, even though it has no player collision. Now, some of the smarter among you might know that deployable shields also block bullets. So why is it called Mira Support Tech and not Gadget Support Tech? Well, because it doesn't work with deployable shields. Why? Honestly, I have no idea, but mirrors are special. You have to keep in mind, back in the day, you used to be able to vault over mirrors. You never used to be able to vault over deployable shields. Something is different in the code between the two, and that's probably what causes this difference. So how did I figure this out? Well, while hiding in this mirror spot, I got drained out by a Flores, and his Flores drone stuck to my Mira. So of course, I needed to test this interaction a bit more, but the Flores drone never had a collision. I didn't think much of it. But I did learn that mirrors are very unique in the way they interact with other gadgets. Other gadgets treat them like an actual true solid surface. And around this time, I was reopening my investigation into the way flat kibas form. As you can see here, flat kibas will sometimes snap to shields and other gadgets. Now, why is that important? Well, because there's already a bug with flat kibas. You can actually prone along the edge of them. Now, it's very scuffed, but if you were able to build a bridge of flat kibas, you could technically prone across them. So if you're already able to move on top of flat kibas, what's the point at MST? Well, that kind of brings me to the skyscraper clip at the start of the video. You can vault onto an MST'd kiba, which allows you to effectively get into spots that you need double vault for. Now, if you're not aware, double vault was patched over half a year ago, but it made spots like this possible. There's something around here that you can use to step up to get the height needed to vault onto this bookshelf. That's where double vault came into play. But since that's now patched, this bookshelf is impossible to do. And that's where MST comes into play. Now you could technically have a flat kiba on top of a Mira and use it to vault up here, which brings us to the next challenge. For MST to work here, we need a flat kiba that extends over the air that we can try and vault on. But the issue is, flat kibas don't extend over the air. Now here's what we do know about flat kibas. If I were to throw a kiba right here, it's going to actually extend over the air because it snaps to the other side of this planter. And this is one method to get kibas over the air. But if we go back to the shelf, there's no spot for the kiba to snap anywhere. So that method isn't going to work here, and it's not going to work in most spots. So we need a new trick. Well, we already have the Mira. And so like deployable shields, we should be able to extend kibas across this too. Now to get the right lineup for this, you're meant to be slightly clipping through onto the object you're going to throw the kiba on. And these big bolts, you want them to be inside of the object. So just turn your Mira so it's like that. Otherwise these bolts will stop the kiba from expanding. Now the placement on this table is kind of bad, but it should still work. So as you can see here, the kiba extended slightly on top of the Mira. And since the kiba was so far away from the Mira, it didn't cover much of the Mira. But using a second kiba, you can see we get a much longer kiba across the Mira. Now it just takes a bit of testing to find a perfect kiba that in one kiba it will cross this entire Mira. But you do need to cross a lot of the Mira. You still need enough surface area for you to actually land on. Which brings me into my next point. In Siege, we have a tech called vault extension. Now the reason there's not a vault onto this railing here is because this railing is too thin. Now you can use gadgets and player heads to extend the landing area on this railing so it's possible to vault on. And the same thing applies with flat kibas. Right now, I have a flat kiba here that's super thin. Currently, there's not going to be a vault onto it because it's too thin to actually vault on. We can use player extension like Mira heads, or maybe just the Mira itself, to extend the vault and actually create a vault onto there. Now, if I take this vault, this should put me on top of the kiba, and I can vault up. But if I find that same vault again, and now Mira moves backwards, the vault disappears, because Mira's head's no longer vault extending the kiba. Now, this isn't really a problem for MST, because for Mira to hold her Mira in the right place, her head's got to be close enough to the kiba that it will always vault extend it. But it's just something good to keep in mind. Now, there's two more ways to get flat kibas in the right spot. First is bounce kibas. Now, if you're not exactly sure what just happened there, the kiba bounced off the wall and stuck to the Mira. Now, this is a mechanic that just happens when you're placing kibas. When two surfaces are close enough to each other, and you throw a kiba on one, it will always bounce to the other. Now, since a Mira is for some reason a real surface, even though you can't throw kibas directly onto it, kibas will bounce off of a wall onto a Mira. Now, bounce kibas also work for flat kibas, and they're useful to raise or lower the height of your kiba placement. So right now, trying to get an MST off this desk is impossible, or it should be, because the desk isn't the right height for either crouch or standing. Now, if you throw a kiba just in here, it will bounce up on top of the Mira. I have a kiba that's higher than the original desk. Now, how do you get this to work in places? You need to create an overhang with the Mira, so Mira needs to look down for this to work. Then you need to throw your kiba as far under the Mira as possible. Now this is kind of weird, because Mira's breathing, so the Mira will move in her hands. But if you throw it too far out, it won't bounce. Now the final piece of tech to get mirrors in the right place is kind of scuffed, and it's still not fully understood. But basically, if your Mira spins really fast when you throw the Kiba, it will sometimes form when it's not meant to. Apparently you can use this to get circular Kibas. It's very inconsistent, so I wouldn't recommend using this, but if you are struggling to get a Kiba placement, it might be worth a try. Now, if you can't get the right height for your Kiba, no matter what, you can try and use another Kiba. The issue with this, though, is Kibas are round, so your placement will always be kind of scuffed. Like, this isn't flat at all, but technically it could work. And there might be another gadget out there that's really good for creating flat Kibas. But even if that was found, that would mean spots require 3 people instead of just 2. Now, the final step of MST is actually vaulting onto the Kiba. Now, since the Kiba is so thin, it doesn't have its own natural start vault, so you're going to need to use a second Kiba for that to work. Now, if you place this Kiba too close, you won't be able to vault on it. So you want to place it a decent distance away. And the vault will always be at a slight angle. So the method I use is I look at an angle and slowly move back and forth. And if I don't see a vault, I keep turning my crosshair towards Mira until a vault appears. And then I just need to take that vault and then up. But there's one more thing to keep in mind with these vaults. If I were to try the exact same thing on this shelf, you're going to notice that there aren't any vaults that lead onto the Kiba. All these vaults will always be over the Kiba. So why is that? That's because this shelf is anti-vaulted, meaning there's no vaults on it. And there's this interesting thing about flat Kibas. When you throw a flat Kiba on something, it will copy the anti-vault properties of the object you throw it on. Why is that? Well, say this cabinet was anti-vaulted, and you threw a flat Kiba on here. You would just be able to vault onto that flat Kiba. But since it copies the anti-vault properties, you can't do that. So how do you know if something's anti-vaulted? Well, one simple trick is using Azami and Ayana. You can just go look if there's a vault on something. There's no reason there shouldn't be a vault here, which means this is anti-vaulted. And so if something looks like it should have a vault, and it doesn't, it's probably anti-vaulted. And I think that about covers everything. MST is a very complex tech, but it's also very unique in what it brings to the table. Now, many techs actually give you height. The only other one is Kiba bridging. And I'm fairly confident MST will make it to Siege X. And I find it highly unlikely that they patch MST before they patch Kiba bridging. And if they do that, I don't even know. But I hope you learned something from this video. I hate MST. A horrible tech.